Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. I've got Michael Lewis, Dr. Michael Lewis, the Board of Advisors of CV Scientists with us on the show. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to join you today.
I'm glad you're here. Okay, tell us about yourself. Tell us about CV Scientists. And I got a whole bunch of questions here.
Yeah, okay. Well, I am a retired Army physician, spent 31 and a half years in the Army, and the last 5 or so years of that, I got involved at Walter Reed National Medical Center and the Uniformed Services University, and kind of had the idea come to me and pitched it, and they said basically, go for it, look into it. And the idea was, could we use nutritional therapy to help our soldiers recover from traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and the like. And specifically, I had hit upon the idea our brain's made of fat and more importantly, omega-3 fats like you would get from fish oil. And so why not try high-dose fish oil and see if that would make a difference? And really never was able to get the studies quite off the ground, but certainly anecdotally, I've worked with thousands of patients over the last 10, 12 years and have had great success with it.
Okay, what are we doing now to help people? What are you doing now to break the mold and move this forward so more people can have access to better health care through the CBD oil?
Well, so along the line, so I was working with fish oil, omega-3s, and then I had some friends that actually moved from the fish oil industry over to the CBD industry. And so they said, you got to take a look at this. And, being from an Army background, of course, the idea of dealing with cannabis was not forefront on my mind. But I was open-minded enough to take a look at it, and particularly hemp-derived CBD, not the other the other cannabis, but the as derived from hemp, and started trying it with a few patients and just had even better results. The stories I would get back from patients was basically, hey, that fish oil stuff was really good, but that CBD has changed my life, and helping patients have better focus, clearer mind. The biggest thing that I found was actually decreasing the anxiety that a lot of people that have had head injuries have. And certainly, in today's world, there's plenty of stress and anxiety out there, so it is not just for head injuries.
Tell me about the other cause. I mean, aside from head injuries, what else does it solve or alleviate?
Well, the biggest thing it can help with is anxiety. And so, I always like to tell stories because people can relate to stories. And I got one good friend of mine who's a New York Times bestseller, New York City mom, husband's an entrepreneur, she's an entrepreneur, 2 teenage girls, lots of stress that, you get in New York City in that environment, and no head injuries. And when I convinced her to start trying the hemp CBD, it just has turned her life around. She's somebody who had been spending decades using pharmaceutical ways to help with her anxiety. She's got rid of all of that, and in fact is just like one friend after another, you've got to try this, and sort of through the mom network of suburban New York City.
Now, I'm looking at your website, CBD Oil, and I wanted to know, it's one thing because there's been a lot of exposure about what CBD oil does, and I've got a lot of people that want to invest in this space. They just don't know how to do it properly. I want to know what you're doing with the company. Talk to me, let's say, like I was an investment banker wanting to invest in your company, or just a regular Joe or Jane wanting to invest in your company. Where are we going with this?
Well, you bring up a really good point. From an investor standpoint, it's the wild, wild west. Yep. There's companies out there left and right. It's almost like a .com kind of situation. And so everybody wants to get into the cannabis space. And there's certainly ways to do that, on the angel side or the venture capital side. And the idea of getting involved in growing operations or dispensary operations and things like that. I'm talking, when we're talking about CV Sciences, CVSI, Charlie Victor Sierra India, as far as initials, it's listed, it's an over-the-counter stock. There's really two big companies in the cannabis, the hemp-derived particular, but the cannabis space in the United States, and that's the Stanley Brothers, Charlotte's Web products, and the CVSI and the PlusCBD Oil products. And they're really the two, gold and silver medalists here. And then there's everybody else. And everybody else is trying to figure out how to find some space in this market. Whereas, the two CV Sciences and Stanley Brothers have been around the longest for the most part, and they are by far the two biggest, and they're both publicly traded. CVSI just recently, I think just maybe the end of the week, or maybe it was yesterday, I'm not sure, but came out and announced that they are applying to move from the over-the-counter market over to the Dow Jones. So, or it might have been the NASDAQ. But
probably the NASDAQ, the Natural Progressives.
Probably
NASDAQ, New York.
Yeah. But they're moving off of the OTC markets into one of the bigger markets. So, as an investor, they should give you a little bit more security, a risk-reward kind of thing. But certainly, when you get to the bigger markets, there's going to be a little bit more stability to be able to get there.
I was just talking to somebody today from an investing institution. They're doing a $10 to $12 million raise. One of their products, they have energy, they have water, and then they have cannabis. And we were talking about the types of investors that are moving in their directions. Institutional money, that's police and teacher and fireman pension and endowments. Those types of investors are now starting to look at this sector as a viable form of investment for diversifying their portfolio, whereas before it was pretty much just bonds and IBM.
Right. Well, it's an exciting new market. All you have to do is look at the political landscape. We talked about it just briefly prior to coming on air. And if you look at the political landscape and what's going on, I mean, so you've got the Attorney General, holding his line, and probably kind of feels like he has to, just because it is what it is. I don't, I'm not going to say whether I agree with it or not, but you've got states left and right that are approving cannabis for recreational or medicinal, but more importantly, you've got the Farm Bill of 2018 that's going forward, and the Senate part of the Farm Bill has what's called the Hemp Act of 2018. It was introduced by Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, and that the Hemp Act of 2018 basically is saying, listen, there's all kinds of confusion out there about cannabis. You've got marijuana and you've got hemp. And the Hemp Act is basically saying we're taking hemp and we are defining it, with specific parameters, and we are making it 100% legal to grow, to cultivate, to use, to produce products from. And so if that the Senate part of the Hemp Act gets reconciled with the House part of the Farm Bill, which didn't have that, if that goes forward and becomes law as part of the agricultural Farm Bill for 2018, that's going to be huge, because it literally is just saying everything hemp is legal. And it'll take away all of the issues that you and investors typically have. So we got states and you got federal. And you mentioned before we went on air about some federal stuff. Well, banking is federal, and that's probably the biggest problem. That's why the marijuana business is all cash, because you can't use federal banks to process the monetary side of the whole industry. And so if we can get hemp over that big hurdle, it's going to open up a big, huge segment for the hemp world.
So now the key is to find early places for the early adoption in your portfolio that you feel secure are actually going to end up in an enterprise, and it's not somebody that's in, Northern California in the back hills that's put up a website, right?
Right. I mean, it's looking for the, in 1997, 98, 99, it's looking for the Microsoft, Amazons, and Apples, not all the little guys that, some of them survived, some of them got bought up. And if you're a good enough investor and you can find that little cannabis company that's going to get bought up and make a good profit, good on you. But if you're a little bit more conservative and want to, there's really only two big companies out there right now on the hemp side of the cannabis. And otherwise, you got to go up to Canada and look at the Canadian marijuana stocks. And I'm sure that'll make a whole. I'm not familiar too much from the investor side of things, but that's a whole different story. Probably a whole new segment that you ought to look for. But on the U.S. side, there's really only two big players.
Got it. All right. Is there anything else that I should have brought up that maybe it just ran past me, I missed it, that you want to bring to our audience before we close out?
The only thing I would say is, the area that I really got involved in, I'm going to kind of bring it back. I'm a medical doctor. Bring it back to the medical side is, that's how I got involved in this, is from looking what's best for my patients. A big part of it, I eventually tried to get all that knowledge out of my head and onto paper. And so I came out with a book last year called When Brains Collide. You can find it on Amazon. Goes into a lot of detail. I think we totally underestimate the amount of concussions and head injuries that we have in this country. Certainly the NFL has got a spotlight on them. And that's a good thing in that it's a raising awareness. But people that are looking for more information, When Brains Collide is a great place to start.
Great. Thanks for being on the show, Michael.
All right, Michael, my pleasure.
All right, you've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to get an update of things you've missed, fill out the information form on our newsletter, our video newsletter, on the homepage of our website, WFN1.com. Thanks for joining. We'll be back with more great news soon.